Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining today's Dentsu International Women's Day panel. I'm Caroline Dean. I'm the Global CMO for Dentsu's creative agencies. Yesterday was International Women's Day, a day that celebrates social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women around the world. This day also marks a call for action for accelerating gender parity. So we need to acknowledge that what we do as a creative industry has a significant impact on shaping culture. Yet we know there is systemic inequality in the creative industry. And this is true for gender as it is for other forms of diversity. We know that inclusive teams shape inclusive work. So over the next 40 minutes, I'm really delighted to be moderating a panel featuring some of our brilliant creative leaders at Dentsu International. They're going to be sharing with you their career stories and how their superpowers have helped them in business to push creative boundaries and challenge the status quo. So, I'd like to introduce you to our panelists. First up is Jean Lin. She is the Global CEO for Creative. She describes herself as an idea and culture engineer, and she believes creativity can solve business problems and make people's lives better. Jean is a frequent industry speaker at industry events. She has been a jury president twice at Cannes Lions, and she is a jury president at the AD&D Awards this year. Next up is Merlee Jayme. She's the global co-president for dentsuMcgarrybowen. She is one of only 8 women in the Drum 29 global ranking for top 100 chief creative officers in the world. She's known for her work that pushes insights and innovation, and she has won numerous major creative awards, including a Cannes Lion for Grand Prix for Mobile and Grand Clio. She's a sought-after international speaker, opinion leader, and mum to 4 creative girls. Next up is Alison Miller. She's a creative director at dentsuMcgarrybowen in Chicago, helping to grow and modernize global brands. Her passion lies in working on beloved brands that have a strong sense of corporate responsibility and brand purpose, and helping those brands find a unique voice. And finally, Kika Douglas, who leads the creative at the Amsterdam dentsuACHTUNG office in a role as executive creative director. She also has a background in psychology, and her work is focused on bringing together brands, technology, and culture, helping companies to move fearlessly forward and create magic. Her work has also been recognized at Cannes Lion, D&AD, and many more. So Kika, let's get started with you. Could you tell us about someone who's influenced you and the creative leader you have become today?
Definitely. Without doubt, one of the persons that have most influenced me is my grandmother. And I think that brings to the table a really important subject, that is having role models as a woman. My grandmother was a really creative person. She was a mother of 11 kids, and she rode a motorbike, so she was really forward thinking for her age, and she always encouraged me to find my own creative spirit. In the same way, I was lucky enough to work at agencies that were led or managed by women, and I think that also really inspired me to pursue this path.
That's great. Over to you, Alison.
So when I was a junior, in my first role, I was speaking with a creative director, and we had this conversation around a cut, and the creative director was telling me what he thought about the cut, and he asked me, "What do you think?" And I was like, yeah, I agree with what you just said. And he just cut me short and said, "I don't want you to disagree with me. I pay you for your opinion." And it was something that's really stuck with me, because it was something that I found very empowering, that in that moment, he wasn't teaching me how to make a great ad or how to think about a great ad, but also to trust my gut and to trust my intuition and to have the confidence to bring that forward. And so I think that has really shaped how I am as a creative director, that all of our opinions matter. And as I shape kind of the teams that I work with, really empowering people to trust their own intuition as well.
So true. Great advice there. Jean, how about you?
Well, mine will go back a long time. The people that influenced me the most are my father And I remember that's probably grade 2. So I was maybe 7. I had quite a disappointing school day because somebody criticized me for being a girl. So my father spent maybe an hour with me when I got home, when I told him the story, and look into my eyes and says that don't ever let other people tell you who you are and what you can be. I want you to spend time, striving to be a better person rather than trying to be a smarter, perfect woman. That stayed with me for a long time. I think as a leader, you don't always have to be authoritative. Sometimes I want to put on a silly floral dress to work. I don't always want to be black or blue. I don't always need to be right. I can tell people what I don't like. I don't need to pretend that I like football to blend into a conversation. And that's wonderful. That's liberating. So I'm really grateful to have that conversation with my father when I was 7.
So liberating. Thank you. And Merlee, how about you?
I think it's my mother. My mother was very religious, and she would bring me along to any of her church events when I was growing up. So I was her tag-along daughter. And every single question, I was so curious as a kid, every single question I would ask, she has an answer, and based on her religious belief. So at 13, I said, maybe, because I have so many questions about life. I can't even remember what those questions were by now, but I was questioning a lot of things. And I said, maybe entering a convent would answer all my questions. So I wrote a letter to my mom, and I asked an aunt to drive me to a convent, and I stayed there. And it was a contemplative convent. It's a Benedictine monastery. So it's an ora et labora, work and pray kind of convent. And it's so ironic that today I work so hard and pray that we win. I mean, it's something that's got stuck with me. And I lived there. I didn't leave the convent for 3 years. And I was like, the novice, because I was very young, was not given any vows. But at 16, I said, I've learned enough. I think I've learned enough. I left and went home. To this day, my mother doesn't even know what I do for a living. Doesn't even understand what the industry is all about. But whenever I have questions, she seems to have the answer. And I really think if what she said one day to me is, whatever happens, Murli, you never let go upholding your values. And that was what I learned. So up to this day from her.
Fantastic. Thank you. So all of you really are having incredible careers in the creative industry. But we know that, times are not always good. Could you tell us about a time when you have faced a hurdle, how you felt and what you've learned from it? So Kika, let's start with you.
Well, I've definitely had many situations that were difficult in which I've learned a lot, but I do think there's a common denominator in most of them. And that is the fact that I, some way or another, managed to voice my feelings or how that situation made me feel in a kind and respectful way, but being true to what I felt. And I remember I had one boss that was actually also a woman and who I really admired, but one day she was extremely unfair to me and my teammates. And it made me really angry. And I spent that whole night awake thinking, what should I do? I need to tell her that what she did was wrong. But I was also very young, so I was really afraid that if I told her, she would fire me. I don't know. Those were the logics, right? When you don't have that much experience. So I actually didn't tell her anything for quite some time. And I realized I was starting to become resentful about it. So one day I said, okay, I'm just going to write down how I feel and I'm going to read it to her because that was easier for me to just write it down. So I got all my courage together and I asked her if I could talk to her. I read her the letter I had written, and I was really surprised by her reaction because, first of all, she started crying and then she hugged me and she apologized. So I learned a lot from that experience. It's always has stayed with me because it told me, first of all, and it's very connected to what Jean said as well, if you do the right thing, even though you're afraid of it, but you stick to your values, then you normally end up in a good place. But it also really taught me from her to see such a strong leader allow herself to be vulnerable in front of me because she knew she had done something that was wrong, also taught me that, yeah, it's really okay to be vulnerable as a leader.
That's really wise words. Murli, over to you for your difficult experience.
Well, like Kika, I had several, I'm 30 years in this industry. But the biggest for me, unforgettable one is when I started my agency. And you know how hard it is when you start an agency. Every single client you win makes you survive, okay? But we have the biggest client, and that was a telecommunications company, so it was really big. So we had finished, we were celebrating, we finished doing a campaign, and we invited these clients to our office, little office, for dinner and drinks. And the boss was there. And then at around 10 p.m., he was saying goodbye. Us being the head of the agency, and he has the highest position, I went with him to usher him out to the lobby. So we went into the elevator. And up until when I pressed the lobby elevator, I felt that he was hovering behind me. He was kind of making advances. And that's where it dawned to me, what is happening? And believe me, every single energy in my body, I did all the karate moves that I've only seen in the movies. I have no formal training whatsoever, but I really did everything. And I just remembered saying, behave yourself, sir. It was the longest time elevator ride. It just simply opened, and there was a security guard who knows me pretty well because it's our building, and said if I was okay. And then he left. For me, that was our biggest agency. We were a small agency, biggest client, and we were very small. I knew what it will take if we lost that client. But I went to my partners, and thank God they were he's for she's. When I told them about what happened, there was no question asked. We resigned the client. There were so many worries. Will we be able to pay the salaries of our people? There were a lot of worries, but we were able to pitch back. And years after, again, how ironic, we have it again as a client with, as a brand, but clients have changed, through the years. So I really, this is again, it resonates my mom's words to me. You have to do what's right, whatever it takes. And partner with people who treasure the same values as you do, and those who would protect you no matter what.
Yeah, it's so important to have that protection, isn't it? So, Alison, how about you? Tell me about your tough times.
So an experience years ago that comes to mind as a turning point. I was on a really tough production that was just very intense. Those times where you're just in it and everything's just kind of being thrown at you. And it happened to be all female clients who were all very direct, and at times very harsh. And at times I felt very much like I was terrible at my job because you'd start to internalize that when it starts being thrown at you. And it became a turning point for me because in two ways. One, you have to have that moment where you realize it's not about you, it's about the work. And it shouldn't be internalized. These things that they're saying are just about making the work better. But in that way, I think I really realized that everyone has a different communication style. And that was a big kind of enlightening moment for me, that just because someone might communicate differently than I do, doesn't mean they have different intentions. I think that's the biggest thing, to realize that we're all on the same team and we're all trying to make great work. And once you realize that someone might just be communicating differently, it's just a really interesting moment where you can just take it in a different way and reframe it in your brain. And I think that was a big kind of turning point and unlock for me as a creative.
That's great. Thank you. So let's talk a bit more about the female experience in the creative industry. Murli, let's come back to you. Can you tell us about your turning points?
My turning point would be being a mom, juggling it with a creative job. It wasn't easy. I was like a mom at 26. It's so early. I wouldn't even advise my daughters to have that. It was really tough, okay, struggling. I would remember myself 8 months pregnant, and I would come home at 2 a.m. because I'm preparing all the presentation deck of the pitch the next day. But, I would bring my kids as well. I have 4 daughters. I would bring them on a Saturday as I work again on a weekend. And when they were growing up, I would tell them, don't go into this industry. And you know what? Two of my older daughters are in the industry. They're both creatives, and they're both in different networks. We're all competing with each other. And when I asked them, why are you in this industry? And he said, Mom, all along we were growing up, we saw how much fun you were having with what you're doing. So I guess when I was mentoring in Cannes Be It, when they said, I don't want to be in this industry anymore, that's why we have a lack of creative women, it's because we want to be a mom, and I don't think we would have the time to be a mom in this industry. I would going back to what my daughter was telling me, if they see you having fun and really enjoying your work, you're actually recruiting more. So I guess that was my turning point. I go like, just being natural about creativity actually seems to inspire other people, especially my family. That's why I have two daughters now competing with me.
And Kika, how about you?
For me as well, I must say becoming a mom really has been a turning point in my career, and also for two very different reasons. I think on one hand, it has made me become a much better professional. I mean, the skills you have to develop to be a mom every day, like patience, but also the capacity to entertain your child, be creative, be more fun, is something you can definitely apply in your job, especially as a creative, but also, learning to deal with clients who sometimes can also have their tantrums, or even co-workers. On the other hand, it has also made me realize how much stigma there is out there that is not even bad intentioned, but that you have to fight, and that can also really become an obstacle, an unconscious obstacle for women to pursue a career when they want to become mothers. For example, while I was pregnant, I'm a really energetic person and almost a little bit hyperactive. So I was doing a lot of stuff until I remember I didn't even want to go on leave like a month before having my child. That is sort of mandatory here in the Netherlands, because I would say, what am I going to do? But I remember people from work were always telling me, you have to slow down, you have to relax, you have to take your time. And I remember explaining to them, I don't want to. This is my pregnancy, and maybe I live it differently than other women, but you really have to respect that I want to be doing things. So I think that also was important to learn the things we need to fight just because we're women, assumptions people make. And we have an opportunity to prove that we live them in an individual way. So
sure, everyone's experience is different, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Jean, how about you?
Well, talking about pregnancy and having children, I actually had the idea of set up my digital agency while I was on maternity leave at home. When I had my daughter, I just had too much time with myself. My brain cannot stop. I have to do something. I have to create something, and really get me out of the life that it's like there's a physical and virtual element to it. So many people that know that I set up a digital agency, but I think at a time what I imagine beyond what we will be doing, which I'm very passionate about, is to create an innovative place for people to make a connection between their personal and work life, because it's quite separating. A lot of people are talking about work-life balance. In my belief, I don't believe there's a work-life balance, because that would mean that you put work and life on the different end of a scale and try to weigh them. I believe in work-life connection. So I wanted to start a place that's with work-life connection. I want men and women feel that they can bring their kids or pets to the office with the respect for each other. I want to make sure that their family will feel okay at a respectful hour to visit the office. They don't need to feel that this is a workplace that we have to, avoid it. I remember the first time when we have a kids' day in the office, we turn one conference room into a playground for kids. It's full of kids and babysitters. When we start this idea, most of the people are men in the office said that the clients will feel really upset. Maybe the client will hate it. Mm-hmm. It turns out to be all the clients brought their kids to our office on that day as well. And they actually blame us for not telling them earlier. So that's a triggering point for us. I think everything is a human experience, not a female experience. And if you believe in changing the mindset, anything can happen. And that's the possibility of being a person yourself.
Thank you, Jean. So we've kind of covered personal influences, and we've talked a bit about inside agency life. I want to talk about client briefs now, and any that you feel were instrumental in your understanding of the importance of diversity. So Alison, let's come over to you to talk about that.
Sure, yeah. What comes to mind first is Burt's Bees. It's a client partner that I've worked on for years. They have a mission to celebrate real beauty, authentic beauty, natural beauty. And it's something I've been thinking about for years working on this brand is what does that actually mean and how do we represent that in a really real way? And so there's a couple things that kind of come to mind there. And the first one really is about representation, because I think that's the biggest thing when you're trying to show authenticity and reality. It's really just part of the casting process and how you portray different types of humans, because that's really it. The variety of people that feel an inner sense of who they are, and you can portray that to people. People get real beauty and authentic beauty out of that. But also I've thought a lot about how a beauty company can be representing being very real and natural and feeling very true to who you are and loving everything about how you look, but also selling makeup, selling skin creams, things that fix wrinkles and things like that. And it's something that I think has really taught me how much women are multifaceted. And, you know, we often look at it in we look at beauty in these big kind of cliches of this kind of treating all women like this, like monolith that like, you know, just embracing who you are and not trying to fix anything about it. But really, every woman is different and every woman has all these different layers to them that they want to be strong and independent, but they also want to feel beautiful. And I think all of those things coming together really shows, you know, the diversity of thought as well as the diversity of different types of people that you portray. And so I think all of that has really opened my eyes that not only for a beauty brand, but for all brands, just how to depict different types of humans in a very authentic way.
Thanks. And how about you, Kika? What's your perspective on this?
Well, I think Alison's example is a great example of the reality we live in now, where so many brands have realized that it's really great to represent real beauty, real women. But for me, actually, it was the lack of these briefs maybe 15 years ago that really made me realize how important it was to talk about diversity. I worked for fashion brands and female directed brands for quite some time, and the briefs were really not going after representing our human side, our diversity. So I'm really happy to see the shift, and I'm just hopeful of where the future will take us, because we're definitely on the right path.
That's good. And talking of real women, there is a real power when creative work really shines a light on real women and real people and celebrates something that maybe has been hidden from view. What creative work on this thread really has particularly affected you? Let's go over to you, Murli.
The one that really affected me was when I saw Dove's sketches. The first time I saw that, it was very, it was spot on the inside that all of us, for some reason, we don't really believe that we are beautiful. It takes another person, other people to tell us that. And that for me was an eye-opener. I don't know why we always say sorry. I don't know why we have to excuse ourselves and cannot accept a compliment. Things like that were a little bit more of, so when I saw that, oh, I wish I could have done that. So that was a very good idea.
Great. How about you, Jean?
Actually, the same piece of work that inspired Murli inspired me, you know. That explains why we work well together, I guess.
Yes.
that except for what Merlee said, I think that reminded me of the fact that we all have this imposter syndrome, right? We place such high standard on ourselves. it's really, really difficult to meet our own goal. And we also feel that we have to be better. We are not good enough. I think it's important to be humble, especially coming from the Asian root. That's very important for me. But I also think it's really important recognizing your own strengths at the same time. I think it's including the fact that you have to stand up to yourself and say, hey, I am fabulous. Admitting that to yourself and be kind to yourself. I think that's so important.
Well, you are indeed, Jean. Over to you, Kika.
For me, a piece of work that really impacted me was Like a Girl. And I think because it really shows how language can affect the opinion women form of themselves. And taking that example to meetings and to other group dynamics, I really just felt identified with so much of that story, how when I was a young creative, sometimes they would just skip me in meetings, they wouldn't ask me my opinion, or when I talked, it felt like I hadn't actually talked. So at some point I was asking myself, did I actually say something and nobody heard me, or did I just not say anything? But work like this makes you realize that that is not your worth. And you should definitely speak up and not let other people's point of view determine the opinion you form about yourself.
Absolutely. And I think we've all been there. Allison, over to you.
So about, I think it was like 5 or 6 years ago, there was a video that came out from Sport England called This Girl Can. That just has affected me so much. It's just really just a celebration of women in sport and just different types of women just enjoying sweating and working out. And how it's impacted me so much is this, that it's so visual and so visceral, and it doesn't have to say very much. I think throughout, it's very music driven. There might be a few titles, but really the titles could be pulled out because it all is just the visual story of representation of all these different types of women, different body types, different skin colors, different relationships to sport, just loving it. And so I think that's something also is probably telling that as an art director, I like the thing that's more visual, but it's something that I've learned that especially when you're trying to represent a group of people in a really real way, sometimes you don't have to say as much. It can come off very preachy at times when you're trying to say what it is you're trying to get someone to take away. And if you just show it in a really confident way, it can be so much more powerful. So I think that's why I love that one so much.
They're great. They're all really great examples and actually some of my favorite pieces of work ever. So we know there is progress being made on gender equality in the creative industry, but the reality is far away from where it needs to be at the most senior level. Do you feel that there are barriers to women in the creative industry, and what are some of the things that you are doing personally to address them? Kika, let's come over to you.
Sorry, I was on mute. Well, I think I'm really proud to say actually that in the Amsterdam office, we do have parity. There has been an evolution since I started working 3 years ago to today, where we went from one female creative to 8. I think the total team is 16. And I think that part of that evolution comes from, of course, not only hiring women, but changing certain perceptions. Back in the day, you used to hire a female team when you had a female-led brand. And I think the shift is more in showing that, of course, women can work on any kind of brand and brief, be it Porsche or Libresse or whatever it takes, in the same way that men can also work on any kind of brief, also female brands.
Absolutely. Alison, how about you?
It's interesting because my brain immediately goes to not thinking about the barriers, but thinking I actually have a lot of opportunities. I know there are barriers in front of me, but it is interesting when I realize how often I get opportunities that my male colleagues don't have, because we are all focused in the past 5-10 years on helping women move forward. It's something that I've found. I've been in a lot of client meetings, I've been in a lot of pitches that my male counterparts are not. And it's something interesting. I was at a 3% conference, a conference about gender equality a few years ago, where someone talked about this exact topic. How do you feel when you get pulled into a pitch or into a meeting just because they need women in the room? And it's something really interesting because it is, sometimes there's those moments of why am I only here just because I'm a woman? But actually her answer was so impactful to me that it was like, it's all about reframing it in your brain. Take that as an opportunity, because if it was a man, he would take it as an opportunity and he wouldn't look back. So really take any of those opportunities and see them as that and just keep moving forward. And so I think that's how I try to look at it, not really focusing on the barriers, but focusing on like, how do I take the momentum that's happening right now and just continue forward on it.
Right. So reframing that mindset. Thank you. And Murli, over to you.
Okay, so I think the industry is pushing gender equality really hard nowadays. In hiring, for example, because we have a percentage that we're looking after, or in jury rooms, you have your 50%. They would banner it out that we now have a lot of women in the jury rooms, in jury presidents, for example. But you see, having this diverse kind of jury, for example, let's take the jury as an example. It doesn't mean that the job is done. I've been in a jury room where we're 50-50 women and men. I think what is equally important is inclusion. The way that they would show respect and listening to your point of view, including the way you think and the way your comments on the work. I remember there was one jury when it was a woman's ad, then they turned their heads to me. Merlee, what do you think? It's because it's a woman. And then the rest of the judging of the other pieces of work, they don't let you say anything. Or I know everyone in this room will probably have this experience, hip eating. It's called hip eating when you say something and then nobody would react as if you didn't say anything, like Kika was saying. And then when a man would say it, oh, bro, that's really great, and you just said the same thing. So I mean, these things is it's more of hoping for a change, and it's not a bar, it's hoping for a change. I guess it's more of showing more respect, valuing your opinion, and opening it up that you do have a point of view in this room. So that's my take on this.
For sure. And over to you, Jean.
Yeah, I was laughing when Merlee talked about this, but I think, I think inclusion is really important, but I also do think quantity helps. In a sense, it helps people to have the opportunity to understand each other. I think we need more senior creative in the world. Actually, it will make the world a better place, I believe. At Dentsu, we build on the progress that we've made in recent years, and we really want to hold ourselves accountable to say that by 2025, 50% of senior executives will be women. I think it's not like a data that's meaningless. It does show the opportunity for people to really understand each other and interact each other and respect each other's way of working. That's really important to make an inclusive workplace. And that's a really important point to start.
That measurement and ambition is so important to help drive that progress. So for anyone to be successful, it feels like you really need that clear, authentic voice. What are your creative superpowers and how have they really helped you in business to kind of push creative boundaries? Jean, let's come back to you to tell us about your superpower. I think you're on mute again, Jean.
Yeah, sorry. I need to get out of my imposter syndrome first to talk about my superpower. So I think I know since I was young, people feel really relaxed in front of me and they feel quite happy to tell me all of their secrets and stories. I know that I have a way to make people feel comfortable, respected, relaxed. I know this is a thing that most of the time bring the best out of people. People don't always perform at their best when they're nervous or they're competitive. A lot of time they feel liberating and better when they're their self. I think this is my superpower. I have a superpower recognizing other people's superpower and bring people together. I think I'm best to be the agent for talent. I can spot them, I can help them, I can make them better than who they are. And I'm very proud of this superpower. I think this is what makes the world a better place, because if we're all larger than who we are, if we can all be better than who we are, that's when I think the world really gets into a better place. And that's when women can be in a world that's influencing other people.
Great. Merlee, to you, please.
It's so nice what Jean was saying. Okay, my superpower, because it's part of our evaluation in our office that we have to really seek out the superpower. I put it as being restlessness. I feel that I can't stay put in one place. I have to do something, achieve something, and once I achieve something, move on to the next, which my partners changed it to relentless, because I could never stop. The worst thing you can do to me is not to make me do anything, because I would make a joke. My biggest fear is my tombstone will not have anything on it. Okay, so I want a list of things. In fact, I want a QR code on it that I have done so many things in my life, so I'm such the energy for things like that, to achieve things that I want to do. I want to see it. And part of that is also I could feel it. So I have this instinct of doing what's right, what's wrong, where to go, which path. So it's like pretty fast. I know I'll get tired one day, but today that's my superpower. It's still a power.
We feel your energy, Merlee. Kika, over to you.
Well, I must say, first of all, I must say this superpower conversation, I actually sent a message to Merlee the other night, because after hearing her talk about the superpowers, I was talking with somebody from my team and I was trying to help her find herself. And I remember what Merlee had said about the superpowers, and I asked her, what's your superpower? And she immediately said, that's such a good question. So I just have to say, I emailed Merlee and said, this is such a great thing to focus on, to find for yourself as a creative. But for me, I think definitely intuition is a very strong female quality, I think, and it comes in very well as a creative. But above all, I think it's optimism. And I always believe, maybe I'm even naive sometimes, that you can find a way of doing something or of making things turn out right. And the reason why I think it's a superpower is because I think it's really contagious to my team. So when I believe in something, I can help them believe, and I can help them find the time, the energy, the motivation, the idea to make it happen. So I think that is a thing I can really add as an individual to my team.
Absolutely. We all feel that too. And Alison, over to you. What's your superpower?
I'd say mine is passion. I agree with so much of what Merlee was just talking about. I think it's something my whole team would know, that I just sometimes get into go mode. And it's just taking, the idea, putting it up on a wall, getting some markers, getting the people in the room, and just kind of figuring something out. Even I sometimes tell my parents that the nugget of an idea isn't necessarily the hard part. It's figuring out where it can go and how it can be, and pushing it forward and shaping it in all those different ways. And I think it takes like a lot of passion to get there. So I would say that's mine.
Great, thank you. Those are really excellent superpowers. But how can we help some of the people who are listening here today? How can they help channel their superpower? Merlee, what are some ideas you have?
Well, since it's part of our evaluation, it's every year that we get to talk about it. And the first thing is discover it first. What is it that you're good at? And having a good mentor brings it out. And sometimes these mentors would also nurture it. I would always make this analogy that in the Avengers, each Avenger would have a separate superpower. You can't have the same. You'll be dead tomorrow, or at least one villain and you're out. You're wiped out. So we have to discover what makes you stand out in the agency, what makes you different, what only you can do that none of the others can say, I also have that superpower. You can't. It's something that really sets you apart. And when we need something that we need that power, it's you. No one else can do the job. So we always, first is discovering it. It's very important. And one is nurturing it with a very good mentor.
That's great. Mentors are key. And Jean, what's your advice to find your superpower?
I think typically creative people need something to rebel against. That's when, if you find something to rebel against, that's when you develop a new creative solution. I always find this a little bit rebellious energy build up my power base and enhance my mega self. And therefore, I can extend the influence to many, many things and many, many people. I do think that's really important because, as I said, we can all be larger than who we really are or who we think we are. It's really important to find the energy source, understanding yourself, and ensure that you can nurture yourself in a sustainable way. So direct your energy to your passion point is so important. And I feel it's really useful to find the one thing that you're rebellious against.
That is great advice. We all need a villain. Kika, how about you? What tips can you give?
I would say don't try to change yourself to fit into a brief. I would say actually the opposite. Be as much yourself and put it into the creative you are. So if you're weird, let your creative be weird. If you're funny, let it be funny. I think the more authentic it is, the closer you are on your path to find out what makes you unique.
Fantastic. And Alison, finally a tip from you?
Yeah, I think exactly what Kika just said, but also as we approach that to clients and our team members as well, just being authentically you. I think sometimes, especially when you're dealing with clients who are executives or these high powered people, sometimes we put on airs of what we think they want us to be, and they can all see right through that. So it's just being human and being who you are and talking to someone like a human, I think can go so far, and just, trusting who you are.
Great, thank you. So I can see we've got lots of questions coming in. I know we only have a couple of minutes to go, so I'm going to suggest that we come back and we can answer questions and post those out for people. Just quickly, finally, the theme for International Women's Day is choose to challenge. So at Dentsu, we choose to challenge and be part of the solution. Can the four of you let me know what you are choosing to challenge over this week for International Women's Day? Kika, let's quickly come to you.
I will challenge gender bias in meetings. So helping women amplify their voice in meetings or in groups, visibilizing their work.
Thank you. Murli, over to you.
I choose to challenge gender equality, especially working from home. That we did have a lot of interviews with women, especially in APAC, on working from home, and their loads of work is simply heavy. It's not just the gender equality of chores, of sharing chores. It's more than that. We were talking about it when we found out that sometimes it's our fault. In a way, I relate to this, that we have this automatic mode or default kind of responsibility. I talked to a single woman, let's say the brothers are not washing the dishes, and then when she gets home, automatic responsibility is that's me, to take care of my parents and everything else. Automatic responsibility should be shared.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know we've got about 30 seconds and we're going to get cut out. So Jean and Alison, we're all going to post our choose to challenge. So I just want to say thank you ever so much to all our panelists. I wish we had more time. This has been a fantastic conversation. Also, thank you to all of you who have chosen to spend your time with us for this International Women's Day webinar. As I said, we see your questions. We're going to find a way to come back and respond to them. And you can join Dentsu for other panels throughout the week. There are many panels throughout the week, including an opportunity to hear from our global CEO, Wendy Clark, as well. The link is going to be posted in the chat. There will also be a link of this recording, which will be posted in the chat also. And also don't forget, it's not too late to say how you're going to choose to challenge on social media. And you can use the hashtag Dentsu International Women's Day, IWD. So thank you ever so much once more to our panelists.